Saludamos a Daniel Kral, es Senior Economist Oxford Economics. Muy buenas tardes, Daniel. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for attending us.
Thank you for having me.
So we're waiting for the European Union to reach an agreement to phase out Russian oil. Can we expect this agreement to be a reality this year, despite the opposition of some member states like Hungary, Slovakia or Czechia?
So this has two parts. The first part is a political process that you mentioned, that the EU needs unanimity to agree on the formal sixth sanctions package, which will also include a complete ban on oil and petroleum products by the end of the year. Now, this is quite tricky to predict because of the position, particularly of Hungary, which is using its consent or withdrawing its consent to use as leverage with other disputes that it has with the EU Commission relating to rule of law or the unlocking of its recovery fund money, which it still hasn't received. On the other hand, there is also the reality on the ground, which is that major oil companies in Europe have already started aggressively divesting from Russian oil. So we're currently in a situation where, although there is no formal political agreement on the highest level, unanimity to ban Russian oil, the reality on the ground is that actually Europe is importing less and less Russian oil because the major oil companies have turned away from Russia. And in this sense, the oil industry is not much different to other industries. You have seen hundreds of European and Western companies pull out of the Russian market, stop doing business with Russia for reputational reasons. And what we see in the oil industry is pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm. And oil is the most important source of energy in the European Union, accounting for 35% of the globe's gross energy mix. Around 80% of oil is imported via maritime tankers. Do you think this infrastructure issue could be a good reason to impulse diversification? Will it derive new dependencies from other energy sources? What do you think?
Well, this is the main reason why divesting from Russian oil is a lot more easier or straightforward than divesting from gas, because with gas, it's the other way around. Around 80% of it is imported via fixed pipelines in the ground. So it's quite hard to switch suppliers. There is no infrastructure to basically process it via ports or to import it any other way. With oil, we have many oil suppliers around the world, and they can arrive at the same ports like Russia does, and so that's why it's easier for the EU to switch suppliers. Another thing with oil is that the oil supply is more elastic, more flexible. There are swing producers like Saudi Arabia and the OPEC cartel, which are typically sensitive to oil prices. They can ramp up production in response to price signals. With gas, the global oil output, the global output of gas is much more constrained, and it's much more difficult to ramp up. We're basically at capacity.
In this context, we're seeing that Russia is redirecting its oil sales to other countries like emerging countries, and especially in the Asia region, with important discounts. How is it reconfiguring the energy map?
So why we haven't seen a huge oil price spike even after the announcement that the EU plans to ban Russian oil is because exactly we see a sort of redistribution of oil supplies globally. So what used to go to Europe, a big chunk of it is now being diverted to Asia. For example, India's share in Russian exports has gone from 1% at the start of the year to over 10% now. At the same time, they are not able to absorb fully the exports from Russia or the fallout from Europe if Europe were indeed to ban all Russian imports by the end of the year. So we do see a reconfiguration, but it's mainly a redistribution of flows. Bear in mind that the emerging markets are having the same or similar inflation problems as we do in the West. The cost of living is skyrocketing. There's a lot of people at the risk of falling into poverty. So they are taking this as an opportunity to lower energy bills for their citizens.
We know that Europe can't afford another oil prices shock. What do you expect from oil prices given this sanction context?
So we haven't seen an oil price like we have seen with, for example, gas immediately after the invasion, even after the announcement of intention to ban all Russian oil, and that is precisely because oil can be so flexibly diverted. we expect oil prices to gradually decline from the current levels of roughly $110 per barrel of Brent. That also, although there is significant uncertainty around the ramping up of production by the swing producers, the extent to which Russia successfully diverts its oil exports to emerging markets. But indeed, for European countries and economies, it would present a big strain on public finances because of the offsetting measures that would then be in demand if oil prices were indeed to remain as high as they are or climb even higher.
And finally, I have another question because I was just reading about the G7 meeting today, and the group of G7 has just asked OPEC to produce more oil in order to have lower prices. Do you see it possible? Because next week we have an OPEC meeting, June the 2nd, I think it is.
Well, in terms of feasibility, is it physically possible? Yes, there is per capacity. As I said, we have these large swing producers, particularly in the Middle East. But ultimately, this is a political decision. Historically, this kind of price level, price signal would mean a ramping up of production. On the other hand, currently, there's obviously politics involved, and they may be the OPEC cartel may be more reluctant to fulfill Western wishes at the moment. But then again, it's hard to predict. There is certainly the capacity to do so.
Daniel Kral, thank you so much for attending us. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.